We looked at this last week on Thursday. We looked at patterns, and we said if you have x squared plus 6x, we know if you divide that by 2, the x coefficient. So if we divide 6 by 2, it gave us the value that was inside the parentheses. And then if I square that quotient, so 6 divided by 2 is 3. If you square it, you get 9. That completes the square. So then I know that this right here is the same as that right there, or equivalent. So we talked about this -6. So I divide it by 2, and that gives you this number. -3 squared is +9. So then the quantity x minus 3 squared is equal to x squared minus 6x plus 9. The same thing. And we looked at all of those 5 as examples to get us started. So we did one quick thing of completing the square, and then I think we had to leave for an assembly. So we only got one example done. And this one was not, I don't think this was one that was on your assignment. So I just gave you a simple one here. And I said, remember, we're looking at a circle, x minus h squared plus y minus k squared is equal to r squared. And when I look at the blue equation, x squared plus y squared minus 16y plus 39 equals 0, it's not in that format. So I can't find the center of the circle very easily. So if we move the 39 over to the other side and make it -39, that doesn't make sense for a radius because you can't take the square root of -39. So that didn't work so well. So we said, well, let's try this process known as completing the square. So we talked about how we want to take this y coefficient and divide it by 2. If I divide it by 2, I get a -8. And then if I square that, I get 64. But if I add 64 to one side of the equation, to keep it a balanced equation, you have to add it to the other side of the equation. Now if I take what's this y quantity value right here, it factors into y minus 8 squared. And then -39 plus 64 is 25. So I see the center of my circle is 0, 8, and the radius is 5. That's just an overview about what we talked about on Thursday. Then we left for the assembly to catch Kaylee up because she was gone. And then no school on Friday because of weather. So you have your circle worksheet with you. You did not do number 5. If we look at number 5, we want to do that same process of trying to complete a square so that we can figure out what is the center of the circle and what is the radius. So if we look at the equation, if you don't have your sheet with you, you can write down, I'm putting the equation up here for you so that you still have something to go by. It's y squared plus 4x minus 20 minus 2y equals -x squared. So the first thing we probably want to do when we're going to try to figure out what is the center, what is the, just a minute, who does not have one? Just Julie? Here's an extra one, I do believe. Right here. Okay, so when we work through this, if we're going to try to set it up in the format for a circle, x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals the radius squared. We want to put the x and y's on one side and the constant on the other. So if I were to do that, I'm going to take this x squared, move it over here, and I'm going to take the -20 and move it over to the other side. In the meantime, I'm going to group the x's together and the y's together. So if I move the -x squared over to the left, you're going to have positive x squared. I'm going to group the 4x with it. And then we have a positive y squared, a -2y, so I'm going to group those together. And that's equal to, if I take -20 and move it over to the other side, it becomes a positive 20. So does everybody see what I've done in this step? You group these together. Just give you what? That's fine. You gotta soak it all in here. I'm gonna shrink it just a little bit and move it over here. Okay, let me pause it while you're running it. So as we've just grouped, what I want to do is I just want to focus on this x squared plus 4x for a second. I want to know what number do I put right there so that factors into x plus or minus a number squared. So I want that to be a perfect square. So do you remember what we did to find this number right there? Divide by 2. So I take this x coefficient and divide by 2. So I'm going to take 4 and divide by 2, which is 2. And then what did we do to it? Squared it. So then I got to square it, and that gives you 4, which is right here. Now I manipulated my equation right now. I added 4 to the left-hand side. If I add 4 to the left-hand side, what do you have to do to the right-hand side? Add 4 as well. My equation's still balanced, right? And if I look at that, if I just keep focusing on this part right here, how does that factor? Well, the factor, I would put 2 sets of parentheses, and I would put x and x. What about the signs? No. This plus tells you they're the same, and they are both positive. So we have plus and plus, 2 and 2. If I multiply the first together, you get x squared. The outer gives you 2x. The inner gives you 2x, which gives you that 4x. And then the last gives you 4, which is right there. So the factored form of this is x plus 2 squared. Why did we want to do that? Because now you see what the center, the x value of the center of your circle is, right? What is the center of your circle? The x value is -2. Huh? Now we have to do the same thing for y, because y is not in this format of y minus k squared. So I have to get it to that format. So to get it to that format, what am I going to do to find the number that goes inside the parentheses? Divide -2 by 2, which gives you what? 1, -1. Then what do? So I take -2, I'm going to divide by 2, which is -1, and then I square. What's -1 squared? 1. How does that factor? Well, we talked about how it factored on Thursday. Remember when you divide that by 2, that tells you what number goes into parentheses right here, right? When you divide it by 2, that's going to tell you what goes in those parentheses. Now, if you don't like that, we can think about it the way you used to factor, and you go, oh, well, I have y and y. This tells me the signs are the same. This tells me they are both negative. What multiplied together gives you 1. When you go outer and inner gives you -2. -1 and -1. So this is the same thing as y minus 1 squared. Now I added 1 here. Did I keep it balanced? No. So I have to add 1 to the right-hand side as well. So what does this equal then? 25. Now can you determine what is the center of your circle? The center of your circle is -2, +1. And what is the radius? 5. Now what do they want you to do on the worksheet? Graph it, right? So if I graph it, I got to go to the other slide. So I go to graph it. Remember, it was x plus 2 squared, this is number 5, x plus 2 squared plus y minus 1 squared equals 25. So the center of your circle is at -2, 1. And the radius is 5. Oh, that is -2, 2. Thank you. -2, 1. And it's 5, 5. So go 5 in each direction. And then try to draw a nice circle from that, which has always been the challenge, right? Oh, that's nice. Well, something like that. We get our circle. Are you ready to try the next one? Which we were okay with number 6, so we're ready for number 7. Is it okay to change the slide for everybody? All right, so we're going to take our equation, 9 minus 2y minus y squared minus 6x minus x squared. There's an equal sign right there. All right, what do we want to do? Remember, x and y are always positive, so we want to try to make these positive. So I'm going to change the side of the equation. What's that do? Changes all the signs, right? So I'm going to have positive x squared plus 6x. Then I'm going to have plus y squared minus 2y equals -9. I moved everything to the other side by changing the sign. If I keep it on this side, I would have a plus 9 right here equals 0. If I move everything over, it changes the sign when you move the side, so you get positive x squared plus 6x plus y squared minus 2y plus 9 equals 0. But then I want to move the 9 over to the other side, and that's where we just get the -9 equals -9. Sorry, not -9. What's the next step? Find the missing number. This is my routine I get into because I know down here, that number I put there is half of that, right? Which is going to be what? 3, positive 3. And then you have to square it. And what's 3 squared? 9. So I'm going to add 9. But if I add 9 to the left-hand side, you better add it to the right-hand side. So now it's already in the factored form. I made it a perfect square by putting a 9 there because then it factors into a perfect square. X plus 3 times x plus 3. You have chicken noodle soup, you have Prego chicken noodle soup. I bought just some rolls and some crackers and little bottles of Coke and Sprite. The Coke and Sprite, I've got 2 just in the fridge part, 2 in the ice compartment, or warm ones, whichever one you want. What you do to play basketball, right? What do you do to the next one? Or maybe you're doing it. Are you working it? I'll just go ahead and work it here. the center, did you get to be -3, 1? And the radius is 1. So now you need to graph it. So you go back 3, up 1, and you have a radius of 1. Can you try 16, please? Oh, sorry. Why was I saying 16? Okay, that's a good reason. 8. Can you try 8 for me, please? Questions, or did we all get the center to be 4, 3, and the radius 3? So the last thing you had to do is graph that?
Yeah.
So your center is at 4, 3? And we had a radius of 3. There you go. Does that complete that?
Yes.
That worksheet. Did you have, what I need you to do next is to get into IXL. You were working on the parabolas, and I had you stop when you got somewhere around, was it 70? I don't remember that number. I will look it up.